Deep in the endless forests of northern Russia, something ancient still hunts those who show disrespect. The locals call him Leshy, the master of the forest. He doesn't have horns like the devil. He is the forest. He can be as tall as the tallest pine or smaller than a blade of grass. He mimics the voices of your loved ones. He leads you in circles until you beg for death, or until you become part of him forever. My name is Alex Mercer. Last summer I went into the Arkhangelsk taiga alone with a camera and zero respect for old stories. What I brought back with me isn't footage. It's a curse. This is what really happened over those 4 nights. Turn off the lights and listen carefully. I arrived in the tiny dying village of Krasny Bor at the end of July. The air smelled of pine resin and something heavier, like wet rot. When the locals heard I planned to camp alone for 4 nights deep in the old-growth forest, their faces changed. They stopped smiling. An old woman named Valentina, who ran the only shop, grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "You go into his forest with your machines and loud footsteps? Foolish boy! Leave an offering, ask permission, and never whistle. Never swear. Never look for his real face." I laughed it off. I was a Canadian wildlife photographer. I had faced bears and wolves. What was one Slavic forest spirit compared to a grizzly? Valentina only shook her head and whispered, "He doesn't kill quickly. He plays with you first. Then he takes everything that makes you human." That night in the village, I still heard her words while I packed my gear. I took a loaf of bread and some salt anyway, just in case. I thought it was funny. My second mistake? I hiked 6 kilometers into the taiga until the trees closed above me like a roof. The light became greenish and dim even at noon. I set up my tent in a small clearing surrounded by a perfect ring of red-capped mushrooms. It looked magical for shots. I didn't know then that such rings are called Leshy's circles, and that stepping inside one is the same as stepping into his open mouth. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. Around 2:17 a.m. I woke up because I heard my mother calling my name from somewhere outside the tent. "Alex! Alexander! Come help me!" My mother had died 3 years earlier from cancer. The voice was perfect, exactly hers, tired and gentle. I sat frozen, heart hammering. The voice moved around the tent, always just a few meters away. "Alex, it's so dark here. Why did you leave me alone?" Then came the sound of heavy footsteps circling me. Not human. They sounded like hooves mixed with branches scraping against each other. Every few steps the ground itself creaked, as if the roots beneath were moving. I grabbed my flashlight and burst outside. Nothing. Only silence so complete that my ears started ringing. But when I looked down, every single mushroom from the circle had been plucked. Small holes remained in the moss, as if someone had taken them carefully by hand, or by wooden claws. I didn't sleep again. I sat with my back against a tree, camera running on night vision. At 4:30 a.m. the footage shows something tall moving between the trunks. Too tall to be a man, too thin to be a bear. It stopped and seemed to stare straight into the lens. The next morning all my compass readings were wrong. North pointed deeper into the forest. On the second night the forest began to play with me seriously. I heard my ex-girlfriend laughing somewhere to the left. Then my best friend calling for help from the right. Then a child crying. Every voice was perfect. They begged me to come closer. I stayed in the tent, but the voices got louder and more desperate. "Alex, please! I'm hurt! There's blood everywhere!" I almost broke. At one point, I screamed into the darkness. "Shut up! Leave me alone!" The forest answered with perfect silence for 10 seconds. Then every tree around my tent started creaking at once, as if something huge was stretching its limbs. The sound was so deep it vibrated in my chest. Suddenly my tent shook violently. Something ran its claws along the fabric from the outside, slowly, deliberately, like it was tasting the material. I switched on the headlamp. Through the thin mesh I saw a silhouette. Tall, impossibly tall. Branches instead of antlers. Eyes glowing faint green, like foxfire. It leaned down until its face was level with mine, separated only by thin nylon. I couldn't see features clearly, but I felt it smiling. Then it whispered in a voice that wasn't mine, but came from inside my own head. "You should have asked permission, little thief." The tent stopped shaking. The voices vanished. But when I checked my camera in the morning, all the night footage was corrupted. Except for 3 seconds of pure black with a single line of distorted audio. "I see you." By the third night, I was already breaking. I decided to leave at first light, but when morning came the forest looked different. The trail I had used to get here was gone. Trees stood where there had been open space. My own footprints led in the wrong direction. I walked for hours trying to find the way back to the village. Every time I thought I was making progress, I would find myself back at the same clearing with my tent. The Leshy was looping me. In the afternoon, I heard an axe chopping wood in the distance. I ran toward the sound, hoping it was another person. Instead, I found an old woodcutter with his back to me. When he turned around, he had no face, only smooth bark with 2 glowing slits for eyes. He smiled with a mouth full of splinters and raised the axe. I ran. That night the real terror began. The voices stopped imitating people. Now they imitated me. I heard my own voice coming from different directions, screaming in pain, begging for mercy, crying that something was eating me alive from the inside. And then I heard something worse, the sound of my own laughter. Maniacal, endless laughter that didn't belong to me. At midnight, the temperature dropped so sharply that frost formed on the inside of the tent even though it was summer. I heard heavy breathing right beside my ear, inside the tent. Something was lying next to me in the dark. I didn't dare turn on the light. On the 4th night, I broke completely and tried the old ritual Valentina had mentioned. I took off all my clothes, put them on backwards, switched my boots to the wrong feet, and walked out into the clearing. "I'm sorry," I shouted. "I didn't know. Please let me leave." The forest answered with laughter, deep, ancient, coming from everywhere at once. The trees themselves seemed to laugh. Then he came. The Leshy stepped into the clearing. This time he didn't hide. He was enormous, almost touching the canopy. His skin was living birch bark and moss. Long vines and small white flowers moved slowly in his hair. His eyes were deep emerald with golden sparks, ancient and completely indifferent to human suffering. One ear was missing. The right side of his face looked unfinished, no eyebrow, no eyelashes. He had no shadow. He looked down at me like a man looks at an insect that has bitten him. "You cut my trees with your noise. You took my silence with your machines. You entered my house without knocking." His voice was the sound of wind, cracking wood, and distant screams mixed together. He knelt down. His long wooden fingers, ending in sharp twigs, gently touched my forehead. Visions flooded my mind. I saw people who had disappeared in these forests over centuries. Some were still alive, fused with trees, their eyes replaced by glowing mushrooms, mouths filled with soil, screaming silently while birds nested in their ribs. I saw the Leshy shrinking year by year as the forests were cut down, becoming weaker, angrier, more desperate. Then the vision stopped. He brought his face close to mine. His breath smelled of wet earth, decaying leaves, and blood. "I could keep you. Turn your bones into roots. Your eyes into foxfire. Your voice into the wind that lures others. I was crying without shame. But you still feel real terror. Not the fake fear of phones and cities. That is rare now. He stood up to his full height. The trees bowed to him. Go, but take my mark, and tell them what you saw. If even one person listens, maybe I will sleep a little longer. He pressed something into my chest. It burned like ice. I don't remember leaving the forest. I woke up 2 days later on the edge of the village road, covered in dirt and scratches, my camera smashed. Only one memory card survived. On it, a single clear photo taken at night. In the corner, between 2 pines, stand 2 glowing green eyes. And behind them, the faint outline of a face made of bark and vines, smiling with too many teeth. When I got back to Canada, the changes started. Every forest I enter now feels aware. My dreams are filled with the sound of creaking trees, and my own voice calling for help from somewhere deep between the roots. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the woods, I catch myself whistling an old Russian melody I never learned. And on my chest, right above the heart, there is a mark that looks like intertwined branches. It never heals. In winter it itches terribly, as if something inside wants to grow outward. I tried to delete the photo many times. It always comes back. Months later, I contacted a Russian folklorist who studies Leshy legends. He listened to my story without surprise. Many never returned, he said. Some returned, but changed. They stopped fearing death. They talked to trees. They refused to cut even a small branch. And they all have the same mark. He told me the old ways. To enter the forest safely you must say, Leshy, Leshy, I come in peace. Let me pass, and I will not harm your children. Leave bread with salt wrapped in a red cloth on a stump. Never whistle. Never curse. Never take more than you need. If you get lost, put your clothes on backwards and switch your shoes. It makes him laugh and breaks the spell. But if he shows you his real face, you belong to the forest now, even if you physically leave. The folklorist paused and then added quietly, Some say the Leshy is dying. Every felled tree kills a piece of him. And when he finally dies, the forest will die with him. But before that happens, he will take as many of us as he can. I don't go into deep forests anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear my mother's voice calling me from the darkness outside my window. Alex, it's so cold here. Come back. I know it's not her. It's him. Watching. Waiting. He let me go, but he never released me. If you ever plan to go deep into old wild forests, especially in Russia, Finland, or the Carpathians, remember this story. Leave an offering. Ask permission. Respect the silence. Because the Leshy is still there. He is older than Christianity. Older than nations. He is the forest itself. And he is very, very tired of us. If you hear your name whispered among the trees, don't answer. Just run. Outro. Thanks for watching until the end. If you've ever felt watched in the forest, or had something strange happen that you couldn't explain, write it in the comments. I read every single one. And please, be kind to the woods. You never know who's listening. Stay safe out there.